Hello, and thank you for joining me today. In an ideal world, I would not need to be giving the speech. In an ideal world, every child would grow up in a stable home with a family who loved them. Sadly, that is not the world that we live in. We simply cannot overestimate how important a family is to a child. The security that comes from knowing that they're safe and cared for. It's vital for helping all children grow up, ready to make the most of life's opportunities. A child whose parents read to them when they're young, for example, is more likely to do better at school, whereas one that has a poor relationship with their parents is likely to record far lower GCSE grades than their peers. Evidence from the study of early education and development shows that a good quality home learning environment can help a disadvantaged student catch up and keep up with their peers. This is powerful evidence of how much families matter to children. Yet those children whose birth parents are not able to give them this love often end up being bounced around the system, waiting an age for an adoptive family. And for prospective adopters, those wonderful people who are just desperate to give a child a home, as a child is so desperate to be given one. They too often face a bureaucratic system with too many boxes to be ticked and too many judgments made based on where they live. I want to change all of that. I've made it a personal mission to do whatever I can to find a stable and loving home for all of our children. I'm in awe of all of those who step up and adopt. The trouble is, there are not enough adoptive parents to go round. Just to give you some idea of a shortfall, there are currently around 2,400 children waiting for adoption, waiting for a home, waiting for parents to love them, but fewer than 1,800 approved adopters who are ready to give them that home and give them that love. When it comes to adoption, what we have seen over a number of years is something that I can only call a narrow-mindedness or maybe even a snobbery. There's only certain people fit the profile. Only certain people can provide the loving home a child needs. It wasn't so long ago that if you were gay, you couldn't adopt. Thankfully, we have broken down those barriers, but still too many of those barriers exist. If you're single, or if you rent your flat rather than own it, or if you don't conform to a middle-class lifestyle, then you're not able to provide a child with a love they need. This needs to be changed. Unfortunately, too many local authorities are putting up these sorts of barriers. The reality in too many places is still that if you're not that middle-class person, you will be given a much harder time when it comes to being approved for adoption. This has to change. The only qualification that people need to worry about is whether or not they can love and care for a child. Of course, there have to be checks. There has to be process. And let me be clear, this is not about relaxing safeguards. What I'm talking about is the kind of lifestyle judging which has made adoption seem a daunting and even an intrusive experience for too many. In January, I asked councils to put adoption at the top of their agendas and to make sure that people are not being turned away because they're too old or had a low income or because of their faith, ethnicity, or their sexual orientation. I know regional adoption agency leaders took action to address this issue ahead of a recently launched national recruitment campaign. However, I expect all agencies to ensure that their practice is in line with the law and to keep tabs on this issue through regular monitoring. The national campaign will reach out to churches, mosques, and other community groups, starting with a pilot service in London and Birmingham. We want to make sure that far more people from all sorts of different backgrounds are willing to become adoptive parents. And to do that, we must end this obsession with finding the perfect ethnic match for children. You might have heard of Sandeep and Reena Manda from Maidenhead. This lovely couple were told that they couldn't register to adopt because they were Indian, and there were no children of Indian origin waiting for adoption. There is no acceptable reason, none, to block adopters from registering because there happen to be no children of the same ethnicity waiting to be adopted. And let us go further and look at adoption in an even wider sense. To do that, we can learn from other countries and how their adoption systems work. For example, some states in the United States allow adult adoption, and many European countries have adoption processes that differ from ours. What we must do is get as much input and challenge on our adoption system from as wide a range of sources as we can, so that we can make sure the system is modern and responsive to the needs of those who can benefit from it. One of the most significant reforms we have made was to introduce the Adoption Support Fund back in 2015. This was designed to help children who have experienced the most shocking abuse and neglect to start a new life with their adoptive parents. Since then, with a dedication of all those who make it possible, it has given a lifeline to more than 50,000 families. And that is why I committed another £45 million to it for this financial year. While we want to see the same high-quality service right across the country, it is a fact that not all areas offer the same service. It is vital that we draw a line under this postcode lottery. The quality of service you receive should not depend on where you live. There are more regional adoption agencies going live every single month, working side by side with voluntary adoption agencies who play such a vital role. We now have 25 regional adoption agencies operating across the country, covering 119 local authorities. By the end of March next year, all our local authorities will be working within one, which will help us ensure consistently good practice everywhere. So we'll have gone from 151 different localised adoption systems to just 30 agencies who are working together along with the voluntary sector. That in itself is an improvement, as today's new evaluation report on regional adoption agencies shows. We're also committed to virtual school heads who are in charge of overseeing children looked after by local authorities and making sure they make the educational progress that they need to. This is about giving every child in this country the best possible start in life. Our ambition is for a permanent and stable home for every child. While adoption is brilliant and will provide that for many, adoption won't always be the right option for every single child. We need a children's social care system that works for all children and gives them the best possible chance to succeed in life. That's why our Children's Social Care Review will launch soon, to raise the bar for those children at the earliest opportunity and improve their life prospects. I want to end by saying a huge thank you. A thank you to all of those parents who have opened their hearts and their homes to some of the most vulnerable children in our society. You are the very best of Britain, of society. And I hope many of you who are watching this will follow their lead. For those of you who may have considered adoption, but didn't go ahead because there were too many barriers in the way, I will do everything I can to make sure we break down those barriers, make sure that you have the opportunity to open your home and open your heart to those young children who so need you. I want to thank all of you for all that you continue to do, and all of you out there who will take that step and provide a home to a child who so desperately needs it.
Well, welcome, Secretary of State, to Coreham, which is the birthplace of children's social care, and we're delighted to welcome you here for National Adoption Week. I have the privilege as Chief Executive of Coreham to ask you some questions that have come together from across the agencies, adoptive families and children, to mark this week. And the first one is the key issue that adopters want to raise is around education. Adopters are worried about their children being in school with heightened anxiety because of COVID-19, but particularly because of their concerns generally that the support that their children get in schools is not all that it should be. What can you do to reassure them, and what more priority could be given to adoptive children in school?
Well, it's great to be back at Coreham, visiting you again, especially during National Adoption Week, where we have the opportunity to celebrate the amazing work that's done and the amazing achievements of adopted children. You're right to highlight the importance of supporting children in education. This is why, whether it's the initiatives such as the COVID Catch-up Fund, the fact that so much of that is very much targeted at those children and youngsters who have the greatest need, who suffer from the greatest disadvantage, but also, the Adoption Support Fund, of how we actually look at how we're supporting families and those children within those families is absolutely vital. We recognise that children of all backgrounds have missed out in terms of their learning during this global pandemic, but this is reason why we're investing £1 billion to support that catch-up and support young people in order to get back onto the front foot. Organisations in the sector have asked the question of what government is doing to raise awareness around children's needs, and particularly those that wait the longest for an adoptive family. Well, this is something that I do feel is one of the great challenges within the system. It's a real challenge of how many children are having to wait so long before they have an opportunity to be part of that loving family that I think, both you and I have a very shared mission in terms of making sure that that's open to as many children as possible who need it and it's right for them. We need to be looking at how we speed up those processes, how we work right across government to ensure that children aren't denied the opportunity of that loving family, and also to ensure that those parents who want to open up their hearts and homes to that child, it's a system that works for them, that works in conjunction with them and helps and supports them, because I think, as you know and I know, it's not just the moment up to adoption, it's also the support that needs to come after the moment of adoption as well, because it's making sure that we offer that support all the way through.
Yes, absolutely. The government's efforts to address the adopter shortfall are very welcome, but of course the question does become what support will there be for those who come forward and for them as they travel their journey as adopters, and in terms of the future of the Adoption Support Fund?
Well, I was really struck when I was here last, and it was, in truth, such a heart, sort of really lifted your heart, because, you know, not just talking to wonderful people such as yourself, but also really importantly talking to those children who've been adopted, yes. Talking to their parents who had taken that journey and done so much for those children, but also hearing about some of the challenges that they had, you know. And for me, the Adoption Support Fund, you know, when David Cameron launched it, those you know, sort of 5 years ago, it has had that transformative impact on so many young people's lives. So it is close to my heart. It's something I know I need to keep fighting for. It's something that I need to make sure I deliver, not just for those children, but for those families. And I've seen it in my own constituency, how it's had an impact in terms of making that transition easier for those children, but also those families to wrap around their arms around that child and give them the very best. But we also, you know, we need to see it as, you know, a full child's life. It's about when those parents or, you know, come to the start of that process, saying that they want to adopt. How do we make it at every stage as simple and as easy and as a positive process as possible? I know when my mum and dad for many years were foster carers, and I appreciate fostering is different to adoption, but you equally saw some of the enormous hurdles that are put there, and sometimes it is a trial for those people who are wanting to give something of themselves for others. We've got to take away from it being a trial, and every stage being part of a process of giving them encouragement, giving them the confidence, giving them the reassurance that this is the right thing for them, and the impact, the positive impact that they can have on that child's life.
Yes, there are not very many systems in which you get your own coach or guide within an agency, which is the way I like to see adoption agencies. But it is a service for children. And I wonder if you think that we're hearing the voices of adopted children and adoptive families sufficiently when developing and delivering our services, such as the regional adoption agencies, and what we might do to do so, and to listen to more to what they have to say.
Well, you're absolutely right. We spend a lot of time talking about systems. We take an awful lot of time talking about the parents who want to come forward to adopt. But at the core of this, at the heart of everything, it is about giving that child the very best chance, giving that child who has sometimes come from the most difficult and awful of situations, the ability to be the very best of themselves and achieve the dreams and aspirations that we all want for every single one of our children. I know that Coram have already been doing some amazing work of talking with children about their what they want, what they wish to do, and so often the child's voice is the quietest voice. The child's voice is the one that's talked over. That cannot be the case, because as we design systems or processes or policies, the overarching issue, the thing that we have got to be obsessed by, the thing that we've got to give every bit of our passion to and every effort to, is ensuring that that child's life chances is just better than what they've got at the moment. And for me, one of the greatest tragedies about our system is far too often the outcomes from those children from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, those outcomes for those children who have already been dealt one of the toughest hands, are just not good enough, and we're not obsessed about it enough. We're not focusing enough on it, and actually we so often have a system that is actually about process as against what that child gets at the end of it, what they achieve, what they're able to do. And for me, adoption is such a central part of that. Because, you know, no one can compete with the love or the passion that a parent can give their child, whether it's an adopted child or whether it's sort of their birth child. The state were never able to compete with that. That is why adoption is fundamentally such an important good. And when you speak to those children, as I had the great privilege of doing here at Coram, and listen to them, you just hear it crystal clear as to they've been given the world by these generous people. How do we give that to more children?
Absolutely. And of course, the voice that's often not heard is the voice of the youngest children, the infants, for whom time is a precious commodity. And I wonder what government is doing and how we can help to ensure that children are not experiencing delays in securing the adoption placement order that they might need, especially in these very challenging times for the courts.
Well, this is where it's absolutely vital that government doesn't just look in the silos of department, but looking right across it, making sure that we have a speedy courts process. This is often the most sensitive and delicate judgments that we're asking our courts to make, but ensuring that it is done fairly with proper process, but in good time. So youngsters, often the very little ones that aren't having large chunks of their life eaten up in terms of waiting for the process to happen. But it's done swiftly, it's done well, it's done fairly, so that they then have the opportunity to live the life that we want them to live.
And we know that the impact of childhood trauma can be lifelong, wherever children may be in the care system or in kinship care. How will government be ensuring that young people who are adopted, or indeed other young people from the care system, are transitioning into adulthood in a way that enables them to fulfill their potential?
Well, this is where, again, it's so many different sort of moments of intervention. You've got sort of initiatives such as the Adoption Support Fund, which, it's not just looking at the moment of adoption and then there's no further involvement of or support, but it's also about how we support our youngsters in school, making sure that they have the confidence and belief in themselves and the opportunities to learn and the enriching experiences that can be provided through education, but never forgetting we need to support the families in the amazing work that they do, and that's not something that ends at the moment that a child is handed to a family. It's got to be all the way through. I'm glad that we've sort of moved that level of support. It doesn't just end at 18, but goes on to 21 or 25. Understanding and recognising that maybe moments of intervention and moments of support sometimes come later in a young person's life, not just in their, when they're at school.
Thank you. And I often feel that it is ordinary people that are doing this extraordinary thing. What message would you give to someone who is a prospective adopter?
Well, first of all, I recall being here just last year and seeing firsthand and hearing firsthand the amazing stories of those who had been adopted and those families who had adopted, and how it had truly transformed their lives, how it had changed so much for them, given young people, given those children the chances and opportunities that they would never have otherwise have had. So I know what we're asking people to do in terms of an adoption is truly a big thing. It is truly a life-changing thing. We're asking them to open their heart and open their home to a youngster. But to do so, you will have a greater impact on a child's life, far greater than anyone else could do, transforming it for the very best. But also, it will transform your life, and I believe very much for the best as well, and you will gain so much. We will do everything that we can to make sure that the process that you step on is as good and as easy a process as possible. but also make sure that we put in place the support that's needed, not just as you move towards adoption, but all the way through the process after you've adopted as well.
Thank you.